Joining me now is the Democratic Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, who represents that part of Cleveland and chairs the Congressional Black Caucus. And Congresswoman, I can't help but look at this, and you hear about the various, we've heard neighbors swear they did call the police because funny things were happening. And you hear stories all the time, and this happens in a lot of cities, where the poorer neighborhood doesn't get the same attention that a wealthier neighborhood would if somebody made a call to complain about what's going on in someone's house. What are you finding in the neighborhood? What are you hearing?
Well, you know, what I'm really hearing more is that they can't figure out how he was ever in a position to have done what he did. I mean, you talked about his violent past. You talked about how he severely beat his wife, the child endangering. He probably should never have even been on the streets.
How was he, by the way, he was a school bus driver.
Yeah, which is just mind-boggling to me.
Yes. Is there not like a background check?
No idea.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying that certainly he shouldn't be around young children. But I do believe that it may not have been the police as much as it was the judicial system. When you take these kinds of cases to court, judges should have the good judgment to take a person like that off the street. And I think that probably was as much a breakdown as it was with the police department. I think they've done their jobs. Only because as I listened to the Amanda Berry family and to the Gina DeJesus family, they are praising the police for all of the work they did. But also understand, in an urban area like Cleveland, today, there are almost 100 missing persons in the files in our city alone. And so those two families, the Berry and DeJesus family, kept this always on the front. They talked to the police on a very regular basis. They had rallies on a regular basis. I don't know that I can say it's just because it was a poor or working class community, but I know that the actions of the family kept it out there. Now, those families that don't do the same thing, I'm sure their cases get pushed to the back burner.
Right. Are you hearing in the neighborhood a little bit about, is there more trust, less trust with authorities? Is the local government saying, you know what, we need to take a second look? You know, at the end of the day, a community talking to each other, spending time with each other, out on the streets, maybe these things would have been noticed sooner.
That may be some of the good that comes out of this. I mean, certainly you have to look for something good to come out of something so tragic and sadistic and so heartbreaking. So you saw yourself that the police had a meeting with the residents. I think that as poor people, as minorities, there is almost an inherent distrust of police. But I think that it goes to the goodwill of the police to have a meeting to say, look, we're your friends. We have done all we can do. We are going to be here. But the bigger thing is neighborhoods have broken down. I listen to people in that very neighborhood, on that very street, who have used the words, we are ashamed we didn't know. We are distressed that we didn't find out. So I think that sense of community that is going to grow out of this is going to be something good for not only our city, but for other cities. Know your neighbor. And believe it or not, people did know Ariel Castro. Right. They knew who he was. He'd been in the neighborhood a long time. I mean, he had classmates there.
Right. Yeah. An evil mind, there's only so much you can do. I mean, we got to remember who the criminal is here in this front. Congresswoman, I want to ask you about a couple things that are in Washington. You just talked about the distrust that goes on between, particularly the police department and some minorities in some communities. The IRS scandal is leaving that distrust and adding to the cynicism that's already there a little bit with a lot of people when it comes to government. I'm just curious of your reaction to the IRS news.
Well, let me just say two things about the IRS, and obviously I don't have all of the facts and don't want to rush to judgment, but I would say this. If they are dealing with one class or group of people differently than another, then it is a problem. My bigger problem is that these institutions or not-for-profits, as they call themselves, who really focus on the political end should not be C4s in the first place. And that's on both sides of the aisle. But if they are doing this in an uneven or underhanded or a way that is discriminatory to one group, absolutely heads need to roll about it.
Well, I tell you, the issue of the 501c4 moniker and the way that has been something campaign finance reform advocates have wanted to target, and now maybe their efforts are going to get set back on that unintentionally. Anyway, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, who represents that part of Cleveland where that horrible tragedy took place. Thanks for coming on, talking to me this morning.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, up next.